Today I'm going to talk about sin. What a topic. Let's start with original sin. That time when our first parents, they ate the forbidden fruit in the garden, and as a consequence they were expelled from the garden and they never returned to this paradise. When they lived in the garden, they saw God face to face and they enjoyed all of the wonders and splendors of his beautiful creation. That was intended for humanity. It was intended for us today. But after eating this fruit, they were expelled from the garden, and so, alas, humanity has never quite been the same. Now, what is sin? What happened to them? What is this original sin? When they ate from this forbidden fruit, was sin, or should I say, is sin, something that was awakened from within them, or is sin something that was added onto humanity? You know, something that came from somewhere else and was put onto humanity. And humanity was never the same as a consequence of having sin in their lives. When we go through the book of Genesis, we read how Adam and Eve, they immediately realized that they were naked and they felt ashamed of their nakedness. And they gathered some things, to clothe themselves so that they would not be naked. So there was immediately a change in them. They were no longer the same. Before they would walk around naked in the garden, and now they were ashamed of their nakedness. And as a consequence, humanity has never quite been the same. We live in a binary world. We have night and day. We have sin and we have grace. We have two arms and we have two legs. The world very much is binary. Without sin, would we have goodness? Would we have grace? Now that's a question, isn't it? If we did not have this concept of sin, would we actually have this concept of goodness and grace? Or would this concept of goodness and grace just overflow us? Just be so much a part of us that we did not even recognize it. Like our first parents when they were in the garden before they sinned. Before sin actually became a part of our lives, did we actually know how fortunate we were to live in this paradise with our beautiful, loving Father there providing everything for us? Now, what a question. I believe that sin is something that came from within us. And in actual fact, sin was there from the very beginning. It's just that it had not been awakened within us. I don't believe that sin was something that came from afar and was added onto us. But rather, I believe that when our first parents ate from this tree of knowledge, something in actual fact was awakened from within them, something that was always there, like a knowledge, if you like. When scientists, when doctors, talk about the human brain, they talk about how we only use a small percentage, and that the capacity of our human brain is so huge, and in actual fact, the majority of our brain is not used at all, is not tapped into. Could it be the same for humanity when humanity ate of this forbidden fruit? That something was awakened from within them, and humanity as a species evolved into something else. That humanity, after having sin enter into humanity's existence, humanity became something different. Not something foreign, not something that they weren't, but rather the complexity of humanity evolved. That sin originated from within humanity and was always there, but it wasn't until humanity ate from the forbidden fruit that sin became a part of humanity's experience. I tend to believe that. I tend to believe that sin was always a part of humankind, but it was something that had to be, tapped into through humanity's disobedience towards God. If it wasn't for humanity's disobedience towards God, this sin would never be a part of our lives. We would not even know of sin this day. So do I see sin as something foreign, or do I see sin as something that is very much a part of me? Now, this is a very essential question for all of us, because it determines how we respond to sin in our lives. It determines how I react towards sin in my life. Do I take ownership of sin? When I do something wrong, when I do something terrible, do I take ownership of sin? And do I realize that it's me who has done these terrible things? It's not something that came from somewhere else. Satan didn't, send one of his angels and have this angel sit on my shoulder and tempt me to do something bad and evil. No. When I take ownership of sin, I react towards sin in a much healthier way. Because when I take ownership of sin, I realize that sin is a part of me, a part of my life, can, affect my actions. And when I take ownership of sin, my reaction towards sin is much more healthy for not only myself, but for those who I have sinned against. For me, sin is like a fire. Fire can be both a friend and a foe. When fire is raging and creating havoc, it's very much a foe. But when this fire is under control, it's very much a friend. Although not a close, loved friend, it's very much a friend when fire is under control.